right, 6 o'clock, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. All board members are accounted for. Let's start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I got one small addition for the agenda. We're not gonna number it. It's just right before the superintendent's report, we're going to get a report from Stephen Strauss. So with that addition, unless you have anything else, Jeff?
No.
I would look for a motion to approve the agenda with the addition.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Pete with the motion, Jolynn with the second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, no scheduled presenters tonight. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the board? Okay, Cal, you know the drill, 3 minutes? All right.
I do know the drill. Okay. Hi, I'm Cal Vandehuth. I'm an English teacher in the high school, just 2 rooms over that way. However, tonight, I am the Pension Action Liaison for Education Minnesota. Right now, full retirement for teachers is age 65. That would make me a 42-year veteran teacher. I have only met 2 teachers that have survived 40 years of teaching. Our own John Fogarty and Miss Kingston, my kindergarten teacher. These are amazing people, but quite frankly, most of us can't live up to that. And so I'm here tonight to ask the school board and administrators to support legislation at the Capitol for pension reform for teachers. First, what's the bill? The bill is 60-30 unreduced pension. In other words, age 60, 30 years of TRA service, full pension. Okay? It would also reduce penalties for early retirement from 7% to 5%, and it would also increase COLA from 1.2 to 1.5%. I'm actually pretty optimistic. The bills have, in the House and the Senate, have bipartisan support. In fact, it has so much support with authors that they clone the bills so that more people could be attached to them. So there is some pretty decent excitement about this. Why is this important to the school? I would say absolutely number at the top is teacher retention and recruitment. Mid-career teachers are leaving teaching in droves. New teachers have doubts about surviving 4 decades in this profession. I have had conversation with both groups of teachers on the individual level that they have expressed this to me. In short, I think schools are going to lose teachers one way or another. It's either going to be through retirement or attrition, and I think retirement is a much better way to go. The bill as written, the state is going to fill the funding gap. So this isn't a part of the per pupil formula. This is not going to be pushed onto the districts. This money is going to be taken care of from the state. That's how the bill is written. In fact, I think in the long term, this is how districts are going to survive. Because if this bill doesn't go through, a generation of us are going to teach to age 65, and you're going to have the burden of those veteran salaries and benefits fall squarely on the shoulders of the district. And you're going to be paying it for a very long time. I think this will make funding a lot more sensible for the local districts. Okay. Pension reform, win-win. It's good for teachers, it's good for the school, and quite frankly, it's going to make your job a lot easier in the coming years. Okay? I'm the liaison. I can help. If you want to send me an email, or I'll try to contact you later, and I can get you involved in a bunch of different ways, talking to legislators. We have a pension action day coming up in April and another one in May. There are lots of opportunities for you to get involved, but I just thought it would be important to have school board members and administrators speaking up on this bill.
Do you have the specific House file and Senate file offhand?
I do, but not here that I can spout off, but yes. I
think
have
that would
all
help
of that.
when contacting
For sure.
legislators.
Yeah, yep. And I can do all of that, and I can give you letters and everything to send and that sort of thing, and ways to look up the exact person you need to send it to and everything. I live in the Twin Cities instead of here, so I'm talking to different people. I literally got a response just back a few hours ago from my email to my person.
Well, thanks a lot for bringing this to our
Thank you.
attention.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We will close public input. Moving on, consideration to approve the finance report. Sure, Josh?
Yep. This is just your kind of run of the mill, what you'll see for most finance reports, just the cash flow updated. I believe it goes through the end of May here. Some of the highlights, we've been talking quite a bit, the CTE HVAC project essentially is wrapping up. We had Knobelsdorf in here finishing some electrical issues. I think we're getting pretty close to having that all finalized. So we've been holding back some funds, but by time out of the bond, I'll need to make sure we have the reimbursement of all those funds before the end of April. So although it shows some reimbursement there, all those funds have been spent for the district. We just earned a much better rate keeping with that Ayers bond. So we'll pull those funds back into the district as we close out the fiscal year. One other thing that kind of sits in there towards the bottom of that report would be, you'll see the first half of the calendar year 25 taxes coming in, Dakota and Goodhue County taxes. Generally, when those payments come in, our ideas payments drop as a kind of an offset or a balance for districts. Those are plugged in as estimates. Right now, we usually don't get the actual amounts from the counties until usually the day or two before the transfer occurs. But those are relatively pretty accurate to what the final amount should come into. There'll be a first half payment that happens the end of May, and then when I show you the next cash flow at the next board meeting, the second payment or the second half of that property tax will come in the first part of June. It's really the large part of the levied dollars that come into the district are those property taxes. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of highlight there. The normal ins and outs of a normal couple months for the district payroll, going out and bills and whatnot. If you have any questions, I can certainly do my best to answer.
With that bus that we dropped, I assume that's
Next fiscal year. Yep. So
what
much
bus
longer.
number is that again? What number, because I see that you have them numbered.
I don't have that one number. That would be
No,
next
okay,
year's budget, so.
okay.
yeah. It'd be the whatever the oldest, most ready to leave the fleet bus would be good.
Any other questions for Josh? If not, I would look for a motion to approve the finance report.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Luke on the motion,
I'll second.
Jody on the second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Consent agenda. Items under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted under one motion. In the event a board member wants to discuss any item, it will be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. Jeff, would you like to read our resolution for acceptance of gifts?
Yes. We have a lot of donations this month. $250 from Gemini Difference Maker program for the high school art room. Another $250 from the Gemini Difference Maker for the high school art room. Another $250 from the Gemini Difference Maker from the high school art room, for the high school art room. $600 from Anonymous for robotics. $500 from Lucas Hernkey for robotics. $1,000 from the Cannon Falls Fire Department Relief Association for robotics. $300 from Midwest Machinery for robotics. $250 from the Goodhue County Pork Producers for FFA. $800 from John Gardner for auto and small engines. $300 from Holden Farms for robotics. $150 from Palenti Family for pizzas and project supplies. $200 from Lynn Brothers Incorporated for manufacturing in the CTE class. $165 from Anonymous for the middle school, high school PBIS. $320 from Pam Wolf for annuals, $60 from Interstate Building for annuals, $500 from Bar Engineering for robotics, $270 from the VFW for the Cannon Falls High School Honor Choir, $2,000 from the Cannon Falls Ed Foundation for 6 through 12 color paper for Crago Fall, $1,269.64 from the Ed Foundation for pre-K through 5 LED grow lights for Ms. Thompson, $1,000 from the Ed Foundation for 9 through 12 graphic novels for Spanish, $2,050.92 from the Ed Foundation for pre-K through 5 xylophones for Braun, $331.50 from the Ed Foundation for 4th and 5th grade robotics competition for Schleep, $479.92 from the Ed Foundation for K through 5 seating for the library for Ms. Kopp, $4,603.70 from the Ed Foundation for K through 5 light-up headphones and transmitters for Miss Illa. We want to thank all of our generous donors for this one.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
All right, you guys have had a chance to look at everything else. Is there anything that you want pulled out separately? And if not, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Jolynn on the motion. Is that Rondi? Rondi on the second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. All right, some somber news from our elementary last week. And Stephen, like you to share a little bit?
As many of you are aware, Kane Bolin, a first grade student at Cannon Falls Elementary School, passed away last Tuesday. Kane was a bright light who had a very positive attitude even while facing his medical challenges. I think his attitude is something we should all strive to be more like. The school has a few different things planned to honor Kane. His bus driver is putting his picture on the seat that he would sit in. There will be a bench made in honor of Kane to be where he would stand during recess time. One of the first grade teachers has that idea because when she looks at that area, she now thinks of Kane because he couldn't do a lot necessarily, but they would all talk to him standing in that same spot during recess. So Kane will always be there. Orange was Kane's favorite color, so orange shirts are available to purchase in honor of Kane. The shirts have a quote from Kane, "We gotta do what we gotta do." There's also a picture of Maui's Hook, as Kane loved the Moana movies. We will be having a Kane Day coming up. All students and staff are encouraged to wear orange or Hawaiian or luau themed clothes. The first grade class will be watching Moana 2 together on that day. A date is not yet set, but we will communicate that out when we know more. Our thoughts and prayers are with his brother Dennis, who is also a first grader at the elementary school, his mom and dad, and all of his other family and friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And thank you to you and your staff for how you handled everything last week. Hands off to you guys, and thoughts and prayers with the Bolin family, definitely. Soups report, Jeff?
Yes, I was gonna thank Stephen and staff also down there at the elementary for making it through a rough week last week. I don't have a whole lot other than the agenda items, so unless you guys have questions, that's all I got.
Okay. We'll move on to action items. No old business. We will go into new business. Consideration to approve the resolution placing a continuing contract tenured teacher assistant principal on unrequested leave of absence upon acquiescence of such placement. Jeff?
Good job on the pronunciation.
I know. It's the second time in a row, and I'm starting to become a
Gloria's
professional.
promised that she said that she would quit doing that.
Okay.
This is for the final step in the placement of Mr. Strauss as the assistant principal on unrequested leave from our cuts that we had, and I recommend approval.
Any other questions? If not, I'd look for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Rondi? Yeah, Rondi, the motion, Jolynn on the second, and this is a resolution. remember I pronounced it right.
Keep it score.
Yeah,
It's a lot of pressure.
I know it is. Let's see. There it is. Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, trying to decide which paragraph to read here, thank you. Whereas the School Board of Independent District Number 252 adopted a resolution proposing placement of Stephen Strauss on an unrequested leave of absence on March 10th, 2025, on the grounds of financial limitations and discontinuance of a position, and whereas said written notice of the proposed placement on request leave of absence was received by Stephen Strauss by personal service on March 11th, 2025. And whereas said written notice of the proposed placement on unrequested leave of absence contained a statement setting forth the reasons for the proposed placement, as well as a statement that Stephen Strauss was entitled to a hearing before the school board, provided they make a request in writing within 14 days of receipt of said notice, and that if no hearing was requested within said 14-day period, it is constituted acquiescence by Stephen Strauss to the school board's proposed action. And whereas no written request for a hearing was received by the school board or the superintendent from Stephen Strauss as of March 24th, 2025, and whereas said failure to make written request for a hearing within 14 days after receipt of notice of proposed placement on unrequested leave of absence continues acquiescence by Stephen Strauss to said placement on unrequested leave of absence. Be it hereby resolved by the School Board of Independent School District Number 252 that Stephen Strauss be and hereby is placed on unrequested leave of absence as a teacher assistant principal of an Independent School District Number 252 on the grounds of financial limitations, discontinuance of position at the end of the 2024-25 school year effective June 30th, 2025, in accordance with the district master agreements and pursuant to Minnesota Statute 122A.40, subdivision 10, without pay or infringement benefits. And so I'll take a yes or no vote. Clinton?
Yes.
Luke?
Yes.
Jody?
Yes.
Rondi? Yes. Pete?
Yes.
And myself is a yes.
Moving on. Consideration to approve a leave in accordance with the Teacher's Master Agreement, Article 10, Leaves of Absence, Section 7, Childcare Leave for the 25-26 school year.
This is for Sam Neiman, and I recommend approval.
If no questions for Jeff, I'll look for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Jolynn on the motion, Pete on the second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consideration to rescind the 2024 version of Model Policy 522. Jeff, can you walk us through this?
Yes, the next two items are tied together. A federal judge earlier, and I'm just gonna speak in general terms here, made the Biden-era Title IX policies unconstitutional, declared them, and so this policy that was passed for this school year, I believe, was it the beginning or was it last June that we passed this, Lori?
Last June or August or something.
Some in that timeframe. So this policy needs to change and revert back to the 2020 Trump era version of this policy from the Title IX pieces. And when we talk about Title IX in this sense of this policy, it's in regard to how we handle investigations under the Title IX umbrella and such things as sexual harassment and other pieces that fall under that policy. Not to be confused with Trump's executive order in regards to transgender athletes as it relates to the Minnesota Human Rights Act. Those two items are completely different from this standpoint. And so the policy 522 deals with the Title IX issues as far as investigations. And the other piece is still being, I guess it's gonna be fought for probably quite a while because the state of Minnesota has the Minnesota Human Rights Act, which is preventing us from enacting an executive order from the President of the United States. And for people that say, well, you know, we could just jump out of the Minnesota State High School League and not follow it. If we, whether we're in the Minnesota State High School League or not in the Minnesota State High School League, we still fall under the umbrella of the Minnesota Human Rights Act. And so either way, we have to follow that piece of it. So, the rescinding of the policy and the adoption of the old version is what we're asking for here tonight. And I recommend approval of that, because if not, we get in trouble.
There.
Any other questions for Jeff? We'll obviously do both of these at the, individually. I'll look for a motion to approve on rescinding the 2024 version of Model Policy 522.
I'll make the motion to rescind.
I'll
Luke
second.
on the motion, Pete on the second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. And we'll move right on, consideration to adopt the 2020 version of Model Policy 522. I will look for a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to adopt the 2020 version.
Rondi on the motion,
I'll second.
Jody on the second. Any other discussion?
I just have one question. Jeff, and I read through this, do you have like a cliff note of what is the
This is-
general change that we're looking at here? I mean,
So, we use, this is an MSBA version, right? The strikeouts and the,
I
Red
did a
lines.
document that showed both of them
Yeah.
side by side, so.
yeah, that's probably the easiest Cliff version as far as what the differences are between the two policies.
yeah, and I did look at it, I was just curious if MSBA had a summarized version of what, because I know they have done that in the
Yeah, I
past.
think if you pull up Jeff's report, there's a little paragraph there on January 8th that starts off that might be the best summary.
Is that?
That's less than 20 pages?
Yep.
Yeah, one paragraph.
Is that right here?
No, the paragraph above it on January 8th.
Oh, sure. It's on January 8th.
That's what I would focus on.
Yep, so on January 8th of 2025, federal court issued a decision vacating the federal 2024 final rule on Title IX consistent with the court's order. The 2024 Title IX regulations are not effective in any jurisdiction, including Minnesota. This court decision affects MSBA Policy 522, Title IX Sex Non-Discrimination Policy. In light of this court decision, MSBA has replaced the 2024 version of Model Policy 522 with the former version that was based upon the 2020 final rule on Title IX regulations. MSBA recommends that the school board rescind the 2024 version of Policy 522 if they adopted the 2024 version, which MSBA issued in July. School boards should then adopt the 2020 version, which MSBA issued in August of 2020. Cannon Falls approved the 2024 version of the model policy in August, as we talked about earlier, and the board will need to rescind the policy and adopt the former 522 version. Does that answer your question?
I don't know.
And like you said, it deals with more of the investigations side of things.
Of the
In this particular
sex
aspect.
non-discrimination.
Mhm.
It's
Correct, it encompasses a large amount of things.
It's a lot of not only workplace sexual non-discrimination.
Correct.
But it also involves
For
students.
students, correct.
Piece of it as
Yes.
well.
Mhm. Yep.
I have a motion and a second. Done with discussion? Any more questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Consideration to approve the resolution relating to general obligation facilities maintenance bonds, Series 2025A, stating official intent to proceed with and authorizing the issuance and sale thereof, and providing for credit enhancement with respect thereto.
So at the last board meeting, you said it was okay for us to continue moving forward with the roof, and tennis court project. And this is the resolution to officially start the sale of bonds for this. We have been consulting with Ellers Financial, and they're helping us get this together, along with our bond attorney as well. And I do recommend approval on this, because without it, we can't sell bonds and do the project.
Any other questions for Jeff? Not, look for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Jolynn on the motion,
I'll second.
Luke on the second. Any further discussion? This will be a resolution.
Mhm.
Yep.
Lori, do you think just read section 1 on the second page?
Yeah, page 2,
Mhm.
do the resolution,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
general, do that, and then.
And then section 1?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Be it resolved by the school board, the Board of Independent School District Number 252, Cannon Falls Area Schools, Minnesota District as follows. Authorization in district indebtedness. The district is authorizing pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 123B.595 and the Chapter 475 to borrow money by the issuance of its general obligation facilities maintenance bonds. This board hereby determines that it is necessary and desirable and in the best interest of the district to ensue its general obligation facilities maintenance bonds, Series 2025A, in the approximate principal amount of $775,000 to finance deferred capital maintenance projects as described in the district's revised 10-year facility plan for fiscal year 2026, hereby approved by this board pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota Statutes Section 123B.595, subdivision 5. It is hereby determined that the total amount of the district indebtedness is, as of April 1st, 2025, is $2,725.
29.
Yep.
725.
Yep. Do we, and we're voting on this one?
It's gonna be, yes.
Yes, okay. And I need yes or no vote from Clinton,
Yes.
Luke,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes.
Rondi,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
and myself is yes.
All right, moving on. Consideration to approve the revised fiscal year 25 budget. Josh, you walk us through?
Yeah, so, we have done the preliminary 26 budget, really early this year, so we kind of get a hold on where we're gonna be after cuts, so, you've seen that version, you'll see it again, either in April or the first meeting in May, the final preliminary budget for fiscal 26, and that would have the reductions that have been made by the board. What we have here is the revised budget for this current fiscal year, so now the actual calendar, or the fiscal year that we're in, school year right now. What the document has is on top, what the revised budget will be that you will be approving tonight. The middle section is the initial budget that was approved back in May of last year, going into this fiscal year. On the bottom, we'll just show them the changes, the variances between the two. If we go, and really wherever you want to hold the document, Jeff is fine, the revised, that's fine right there.
Just a little bit.
It's all right.
Different sections.
Big changes in terms of, I guess what we look at in broad projects here is, in our office, we talk fund balance and where the district's at. And a lot of times what we're presenting to the board and to the public is the budget, so the actual revenues and expenditures they go. The variance in that revenue and expenditure each year attributes to either the fund balance growing or decreasing. In the general fund, right now with what we have planned, or what we have in this revision as we've tightened up the numbers, it shows a slight increase to the fund balance of $13,783. It's a number as of today. It's going to be a moving target until the audit is finalized, usually in that August-September timeframe, when all the school year is complete, all contracts have been paid out to fulfill this, and the auditors have come through and verified the information that we provide. You'll see one more revision of this budget at the end of June. That will get even closer to what the actual will be from audit. But we like to do this so in our office we can keep a handle on where we're at going with the funding of the district. Changes for revenue. When we did the original budget back in May of '24, the what-if calculation is a spreadsheet that the state sends out. It gives you a revenue projection model. There's a lot of information that goes into that. We are based on being funded by pupils or students in the district, ADMs. Sometimes those things change from early May to where we're at right now. In this model, I've got about, it's typically you don't really have half kids, but it's about 9.5 kids more in this model than there were to start, so that's a little increase for the revenue. There were a couple items that were not in the original what if, and these are redact dollars that are in this budget, so there's some increase in revenue for that. And then some increase in special ed funding. And the way special ed works is generally we were getting back, it had been about 2/3 of our expense we get back, so the cross subsidy or portion that the district subsidizes of that, and the state have done a better job of trying to close that gap a little bit, so we got a little bit more funding back in that area. It is offset on the other side with expenditures, is some of the special ed and the costing from the GCD, where we do a lot of our special ed work, where we provide or purchase a lot of their services because we can't really afford to have a full-time audiologist when we only need maybe a 10% or a 20% FTE. So we purchase a lot of services through GCD, so there's an increase in that as well, and that would show up in the expenditures. The one big change in the expenditures is about a $100,000 payment to, it would be a severance fund for the teaching staff. It will show as an expenditure in the budget, but it's important to know that those are dollars that were reserved already in the general fund. They're not undesignated dollars, they're reserved for severance. And what we've done is made a payment to Mid-America, which is our kind of funding mechanism for retiree benefits. When we get OPEB levy, other post-employment benefit levy, we had to put a sunset clause into our contracts, and now teachers hired after a certain date will receive $1,000 per year into this fund. As long as they retire from the district, they have ownership of that fund. If not, it kind of goes back into the district. Rather than us handling that fund and keeping it in-house, it now goes individualized to each one of those employees. So we can kind of track through, and that's really the right and proper way to do it. So it'll show as a $100 expenditure in the general fund, but it does not affect our undesignated, the dollars that we use for the district. But that is inside of this budget, and that's why you'll see an increase of the expenditure budget in this model or revision. The general fund really is the biggest fund and the one that we're most concerned with. The other ones will I can go through pretty quickly, but maybe before I move on, if there are any questions we have regarding anything in revenues or expenditures or general fund in general.
Yeah, one question on the cross subsidy for special ed. Was that done through legislation, or did it just work out that way that it closes some of that gap? Or
In the last session, they had improved a little bit of that to help close the gap on some of that cross subsidy. They know that it's an issue, but it is something that, in order for them to fully fund it, the state, it's not going to be very costly for the state to do. But they realize that there's an issue there.
Okay. Thank you.
But you said that slight increase will probably be offset by what we will have to fund towards GCED.
Yeah, it seems in general over the last several years, and it could be, that could be pure speculation, but could be part of the COVID related potentially, but we're seeing more and more special ed needs. And with that comes the expense then to follow. Any other questions in general fund? Food service, we are having free lunches for students paid for by the state. That the reimbursement for that is not quite as good as when we were getting federal free meals. So there's a slight adjustment in what goes on in the revenue for food service. We also, and it's just a fact of the scheduling this year with all the days for the REDAC training, there are several less days of students being served, so that will decrease revenue. We're not serving as many meals, we don't get reimbursed for those meals that we're not serving, so there's a slight reduction in revenue there as well. Expenditures are really kind of fixed in that food service. You've got staff and whatnot in there, and groceries because of kind of the times that we're in now, the cost increases and they have less groceries, but they still have the same amount of expense. So what we had projected in food service was to be a slight increase. We have right now a slight deficit. Again, that is in the end reducing the fund balance that isn't in the food service. So the fund balance for food service will stay positive at the end of the fiscal year, but it will decrease. And we want to make sure we're monitoring that because we're not allowed to deficit spend food service. If that were to happen, the general fund would need to pay for that difference that fiscal year. We can't let that go over. Unlike the next fund, Community Ed, we are allowed to go deficit in that fund. We projected at the start of the preliminary budget about $35,000 overspend in Community Ed for this fiscal year. It's looking to clean up a little bit better than that, and hopefully by the time we know the fiscal year, we can clean it up even a little bit more. We've seen nice numbers through Can Kids Preschool, those areas. And some of the staff, we've got younger staff, a lot of students that are working in the Can Kids area. So we've seen a little bit of a change in there. So a little less of a deficit for Community Ed, but as our ours has told us, in districts our size, it really is a service of the community, and a lot of those projects are feeders to what happens in our district. So it's important that we're offering those options, but we also want to make sure we're fiscally responsible and doing our best to at least try to get towards a break-even point in those areas. The construction is at CT HVAC project, as it is closing out. The variances from preliminary budget to revised, essentially as we close out fiscal 24, there were some projects that we did not get done. So at that May timeframe, we put out the preliminary budget. Those things were maybe expected to be done. They weren't, so they just get pushed forward. That is a project that when it's done, the fund goes to zero, it goes away until we have another construction project in the district. So that really is a fund just like the next couple that wash themselves out as they complete. They're just in and out as we go through those projects. The debt service is set to fulfill based on the needs of the district. It's a levy. We collect 105% of the levy. That's just the way it's set up. So in case of our delinquent taxes, the district still has enough funds to pay their debt service bills. When you build up a debt excess, the state takes some of those dollars back to help reduce your levy and give them back to taxpayers where those dollars belong. So sometimes there'll be some variances in there in terms of the revenues that we receive for debt service. The expenditures are pretty much set based on the debt schedules. So to see a negative balance in the debt service is not an issue. We have a fund balance that is set to fulfill the payments that we have for our schedules. Once we go through the process of this 2025 bond, that will be updated and will hit the next year's levy. The trust and agency is really the scholarship fund. In the last couple of years, we've also added in a couple other items. We have received a large donation from Gemini for the Makerspace or Innovation Lab that we keep in there. And then all the scoreboards that we have now, the newer scoreboards with the advertising panels, we keep that in there. The reason being is in the agency and trust fund, we can roll those dollars over from year to year. We can keep them reserved. Generally in the general fund, if there's an instructor supply budget, if it's not spent at the end of the fiscal year, it stays in the general fund, goes to the undesignated, and that closes out there. Whereas in the trust and agency, we can roll those funds over so they don't need to spend them all in that 1 year. You'll generally see a decline in that balance each year as some of those scholarships are set up to pay on a balance that's already in there. They're not putting funds in there each year. They're meant to spend down. And then once you have dollars in for, say, that scoreboard, they're making payments on things too, so there's some fluctuations in there. But again, just like the debt service and the construction, those funds are really kind of self-sufficient. To see a negative balance there, and the difference is not an issue in those funds. So, any question on any other funds, I can certainly give you my best answer.
I had one question on food service. Prior to COVID, did that budget run, I mean, did it balance itself out? Did we make, when parents were paying, when families were paying for lunches, did we have a surplus? Were we buying equipment?
No, so prior to COVID, when we were operating on parents paying for their kids' lunches, oftentimes there would be transfers from the general fund to the food service to cover the difference. Reason being is when we would raise lunch prices, we would tend to go on the nickel-dime variety to raise prices to not have a big hit to families when our prices were going up quarter or 50 cents. Sure. So when those things were happening, we'd find ourselves oftentimes making a transfer at the end of the fiscal year to balance that out. When COVID came and we have the free reduced, essentially a reimbursement for those lunches, We saw revenue, more revenue coming into the district, and allowed us to do some things like purchase some equipment that were needed, either to provide more options for kids or provide, improvements to equipment. The funding from the state is just a little bit different than what the federal amount is. I would say that as much as it impacts there is probably the lesser days of school, not serving them the same number of meals and not being reimbursed for those meals. But it's an item for us to keep track as we go through the rest of the fiscal year. But yeah, I would say prior to COVID, we were probably more often than not transferring money from the
Okay.
general fund to cover food service.
Good to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Josh? If not, I would look for a motion to approve the revised fiscal year 25 budget.
I'll make a motion.
Jody on the motion.
A second.
Jolynn on the second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. All right, that's the end of our meeting. You see coming up, next board meeting, April 14th. We have 3 weeks off. See a couple other things that will be on that, possibly on that agenda. If you don't have anything else, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Luke on the motion,
I'll second.
Randy on the second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. That's it.